This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
On this episode of Bant the Milk Podcast, something completely new.
Intro music.
What up, people? This is a brand new little thing I'm trying here. This is called Bant the Milk Presents Around the Dejarik Table. Is that how you say it? Dejarik? That's what I'm going with. For those of you that,
from Subway Table.
That's right. For those of you that don't know, the word that I'm butchering is the hollow chest table that is on the Millennium Falcon and other places as well. But this is a round table discussion discussing anything and everything we can about Star Wars. This will be a monthly discussion group where we invite two friends. So if you want to be a friend of the show, come on over and you can ask a question as well. Each one of the friends and me and my co-host for this, which is Tom, will all bring a question and we'll answer it to our best abilities. So once again, I'm your host, Rob. Nick is not with us for this, but he will be back for our regular shows. And I'm joined with my new co-host for this show, Tom. Hi, Tom.
Hi, guys. Great to be here. Looking forward to have some deep Star Wars discussion with you guys.
Awesome. And I have two special guests with me tonight. The first one, the second one is back. The first one is
dog issue.
Dogs, they do it all the time. First one is a very special guest. I became friends with this fella not too long ago. It feels like not that long ago, but now that I'm old, everything is long ago. But this little fella was on television. You got it on the big Discovery Channel. He was hanging out with some guy named Ian Roussel building hot rods. Artist extraordinaire, my good friend, Johnny Jalopy. What's happening, buddy?
What is going on, my friend? Good to be here. You know, I'm always super excited to talk about Star Wars, as long as we just talk about the first three movies, and then I'm good. Because I'm old.
Works for me. There you go. And my other guest this week is one of my oldest friends. Not that he is old, but I've known this guy. He took me out for my first legal drink when I turned 21, and for those of you that don't know, I just hit the big 5-0. So this was many, many moons ago,
right?
November 16th. But yes, pretty close ago. This is my good friend from a long, long time, Scott Slowinski. How are you, Scott?
I'm well. I just recently obviously celebrated my birthday as well. So our journey on my now 53rd loop around this, or 52nd loop, or whatever it is, around this crazy sun, but you and I go way back, and it all started selling TV somewhere,
Enough about us. Let's just jump right into this, because this is going to be a lot cleaner of a show than my normal show with Nick, where we just banter on forever. My very first question is always one that I love asking people because it has changed multiple times. But this question, of course, is who shot first? And anybody who knows anything about Star Wars knows that I'm referring to Han Solo versus Greedo. Who shot first? Johnny, we'll let you be the very first answerer on the Around the Dejarik Table. Go ahead,
Nice.
Johnny. Yeah, you can give us the first answer. What do you think? Who shot first?
Well, I'm going to go ahead and go with the traditional answer, which is Han shot first, man. I've heard. I actually did a little more research too today, just going, what do you mean who shot first? Everybody knows, and I didn't realize there was a controversy about it. But yeah, I'm definitely on the Han side. I don't think it's my opinion. Am I supposed to go into my opinion about it as well?
Nope. Yeah, tell us
the straight deal. Okay, so my opinion is Han shot first, and the whole premise of Lucas trying to go back and change his concept of, we see Han for the first time. We're meeting who's supposed to be, a smuggler, a badass. He's the guy that you want your guy like this to be, and you want him to be strong, and you want him to be a little recluse. He's crazy smuggler. He races the Millennium Falcon. I don't want him to. I'm good with the fact that he does the first murder in the movie. So I'm gonna go. It's Han shot first, and I'm glad that he shot first. And as a kid, seeing that movie, all I wanted to do was be Han Solo.
Exactly, I hear you. I'll send it over to Slinky. This is Scott. You're next. What do you got?
I got to go with my gut and and my age, but seeing Star Wars for the first time in '77 in the theater, I was 6 years old, but yeah, Han shot first. As much as in a sense I can appreciate Lucas wanting to fix things later, when you watch the '97 re-release, you see that like angle where it looks like Greedo went like this, and all of a sudden it looks like they had the budget of a Wawa coffee to make that laser shot, and where he was trying to fix things. And don't get me wrong, I can truly appreciate somebody wanting to clean up the negative and make it look pretty again, yada yada yada. But I always hark back to the originals on stuff like that. When movies get re-released or something of that nature, even The Abyss recently, I think, got re-released, and James Cameron, he cleaned up the negative. He upgraded it to 4K. I would have more appreciated that than, seeing some of the changes that Lucas did. That just turns into, what I should have done? Well, that's great after the fact, and, but no, Han shot first.
Excellent.
Thomas, here, I agree.
Yeah, so to me, it's no question. I mean, Han shot first. It's silly to change it. It made no sense. It's not like in Empire Strikes Back with the change he made where he put Ian McDermott's character as the Emperor's head, the floating head, instead of the other actor. That made total sense. It didn't change anything in Star Wars. Didn't change the scene. It actually just added continuity. This doesn't add any continuity to it. I mean, Han was not a good guy before he joined the rebellion. He was not a good guy. He was a smuggler. I mean, how many times did he say during the first movie, I'm only in it for myself? He even tells Princess Leia or Luke, I'm in it for the money, not for your rebellion. He says it over and over throughout the movie. I mean, face it, he's a scruffy looking furter. He's not a good guy. Now, he eventually turns into a pretty good guy, especially during the rebellion, but he's still in it for himself. He's in it for money. There was no reason to change this to try to make Han look like a good guy.
I agree. Yes. I'm going to answer my own question with the same thing that all of you guys have said, which is, of course, Han's the only one that shot. There should be no question of who shot first. It should just be Han shot, period. After George, 20 years later, decided, I don't want him to be such a bad guy, so we're going to make it that he shoots back in retaliation. It was stupid. Like every one of us who saw it before that know that's what we liked about Han, was that he was the bad guy who turned good guy type of thing. Like him being a smuggler and a nerf herder. That's what it's supposed to be, So by changing it and making him reactionary, and then on top of it, how bad it was, the graphics for this. There was even a part where they made his head move to the side, and it was just like totally way that your body can't even contort that way. So it was even worse in that aspect when they changed it a second time, and then I think a third time as well. So that's pretty funny.
I don't know if any of you guys have seen where Harrison Ford gets asked this question about Han, who shot first. And I love Harrison Ford's answer because it is so in the character of Han Solo, which is, I don't care. What are you even asking me for? Which when you look at what Harrison Ford brings to the character of Han Solo. That's why he shot first. Because if Harrison Ford is Han Solo, Harrison Ford not only would have shot him once, he probably would have shot him twice and kept shooting until his gun was done. So
that's right. That's 100%. Question 1 down. Question 2, Johnny, what do you have for us?
Yeah. Hey, so my question is, let me go to finding how I had asked it. So, we all know that the Millennium Falcon is a pretty sick vehicle. I love the fact that, Lucas kind of took a nod back to his hot rod days where the Millennium Falcon has an asymmetrical design. But I do have to ask the question is how hard and difficult would it really truly be to fly the Millennium Falcon and and to go a little step further, be able to operate that thing in a dogfight? So that's my question: is why it's cool looking, but in the sense of true capabilities of flying a ship, and when you look at the instrument cluster and stuff like that, there's no screens where they could see off to the side, as far as I could see when we see front shots. So there's my question: is it possible?
Is it possible, Scott? What do you think?
It's a pondering question.
Deep thought.
It is a pondering
He's in very
question
deep thought.
A lot of thought had to go into that question alone. But I would think to drive and maneuver the Millennium Falcon. I mean, obviously we know it's all quite nimble, but there's a certain radar and a certain gun turret that no matter where they fly through, always get knocked off. These are design flaws that should have been worked out like in the 7th generation of this, or at least by the 4th movie. But if you want to talk about lemon law, that thing has been on so many used car lots at this point, and yet it keeps getting bought. I don't know why.
Because it's the fastest starship in the galaxy. That's why.
Tom, what do you think?
So before I give my answer, do we know who created that design? Was it Lucas? Was it one of the prop designers? Do we know who designed that ship?
That was the one thing I did not go back and check to see who exactly was the designer of that. But
I wonder who designed that ship.
But memory serves me correct. I was going to say because it was on one of the Star Wars documentaries. One of I forget who designed it, but it wasn't Lucas who designed it, but a guy who designed it. And he was like, okay, now we got to put the cockpit somewhere. And he knew with Lucas being a hot roddy type of guy that if he put it on the left side where in America, we always drive, on the left side, he would have been like, don't do it there. They also tried putting the cockpit in the middle. They didn't like the way it looked there. They knew Lucas would like it on the right-hand side because it was different from the way we normally drive our cars. So there was a designer who specifically put the cockpit on the right-hand side, knowing that Lucas would like that version the best.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing that too. I maybe watched a YouTube video, or maybe it was on one of the DVDs from the original trilogy. You know how like they had there was an extra CD with the trilogy, and they talked about the making of. I think it was on there, one of those featurettes.
Joe Johnson, designed by Joe Johnson for the movie Star Wars 77. Yep.
Okay, so
there we go. So it was designed by a guy named Joe Johnson.
So no matter who designed it, I think the whole purpose of the ship to begin with is that it's a freighter and not really supposed to get in dogfights. And it was Lando who made some of the first modifications on it, who put the turrets in. Obviously, Lando's not a great guy either, so he put some turrets in. And then I think once Han acquired the ship, he made his own modifications, and I believe he put more turrets, or maybe the front turrets in. But he did more modifications to it. So I don't think it was really meant to actually get in any fights. I think it was meant to just haul things like for storage, and they basically turned it into a smuggler ship. So they added those turrets. They actually added the I can't remember what they're called, but the hatches where the smuggler hatch.
Yeah, I agree. Since it was a YT freighter design, but to really go into Johnny's answer, if you fly the Millennium Falcon in Disney World or Disneyland, it is very difficult to fly because you do bang into everything on the left-hand side because your cockpit is so far to the right that the whole ship is all to the left of you. So I think you have to be a very, very skilled pilot to be able to know that you have 80 feet or 90 feet to your left, that you can't get that close to it. And being in a dogfight definitely seems like it would be very difficult for it to do because your guns are shooting from, everything is from the left. Unless you have somebody working the top cannon that breaks on you from the cockpit side, it would be really hard to aim anything out of that. So I think, yes, I agree with you, Johnny. I think it would be extremely difficult to fly this thing. But, when you're the best smuggler in the galaxy, then you learn how to fly something that's completely off-centered.
Yeah.
So,
and then I agree with that. I definitely think it would be difficult. It is obviously, when you, as you're saying, even from the way it's designed and the ride, it's not an easy thing to maneuver. But I do definitely think that Lucas took, or whoever designed for Lucas, the eye that he was looking for, something different, something unique. Definitely was probably looking at some of the old Ed Roth hot rods. If you're not familiar with those, the creator of Ratfink, definitely take a look at probably something called the Orbitron. Is a hot rod that used a lot of asymmetrical design. The Outlaw, and also there was one more that's yellow, and it is the Outlaw. But both of those vehicles have a lot of asymmetrical design, very much like the way the Millennium Falcon is. There's a lot of things off to the left, and then some things off to the right. That really is cool in design work. I will say though, again, going back to you said about Han Solo being the skilled pilot that he is, I bet he probably would shoot first in a gunfight.
I bet he would.
Yeah, he's not waiting.
Han always shoots first.
All right.
I have to kind of wonder and ask, since it was a smuggler vehicle and basically a tractor trailer of sorts, was there actually any kind of weight restrictions on this? And did you have to put everything
where the top came off and whatever? Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, I'm trying to picture it in my head, that where the turrets are obviously the highest and lowest points, and then I believe it kind of slopes down,
yes,
almost like a UFO, and then the cockpit is actually raised a little bit. So you might actually be able to see, if you get a 180-degree view, you might actually have a pretty good view to the left and the right.
Yeah, it's definitely not. You're absolutely right. When you look at the design, I even tried to look at some drawings in it as well. And the cockpit is actually a little bit elevated as well as that side piece kind of comes up as a slope to the cockpit. So yeah, there's some thought process of being able to see to the left, but yeah, way behind you, I can't imagine, especially if C-3PO sitting behind you or Princess Leia's hanging on your shoulder. Move, lady. I gotta look and drive this thing.
I gotta drive this thing.
Some of my favorite scenes have this shot where it shows Han Solo, somebody running to or from the cockpit down that hallway.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
That right there makes the ship great because it's so different than most other ships.
Definitely my favorite vehicle out of all the Star Wars, second to Darth Vader's TIE Fighter. But
right,
all right, that's my question. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
That's okay. No, that's halfway through. So we're gonna take a quick commercial break and come right back with Scott's question right after these commercial breaks.
Subtle results, still you, but with fewer lines. Botox Cosmetic, out of botulinum toxin A, is a prescription medicine used to temporarily make moderate to severe frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better in adults.
Effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Don't receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow and eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Tell your doctor about medical history, muscle or nerve conditions including ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. For full safety information, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300.
See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
Thanks. All right, and we're back. And go ahead, Scott, with your question. What do we have for question number 3 of the night?
So this is going to have a follow-up to it, or as you would think, but there were a lot of different languages, obviously, in Star Wars. There were a lot of different things that we heard, and some from people, some from creatures, some from animals. In this case, Ewoks were probably the biggest animal that we saw in any of the movies. But what 2 languages were combined to create it?
It's an interesting question.
All right.
I'm guessing, I didn't do any research, but I'm guessing one would be some African tribe. My second guess would be like something out of the Asian Pacific. So that would be my guess about the 2 different languages. Something African and something Asian.
We'll go around, and then I'll kind of fill you in.
Okay.
All right. Well, I cheated and looked this up. So, because
of course you did. Of course you did.
You don't get a guess then if you looked, if you went and looked. So
that doggone internet with all its information.
No, it's all out there. So I'm gonna abstain because I did look up the answer, but it is I did look up some other things about the Ewoks as well. I'll get back to that afterwards. So I'll skip mine. I already looked it up. I cheated. Had I not looked it up, I would not have known. Johnny, you did not look it up.
No, I did not look it up. And to be honest, I have no idea. I didn't even realize it was 2 languages. I was assuming it was maybe 1, and maybe they took a language and maybe recorded it backwards, and then being that they weren't, they were obviously. I thought possibly most of them were puppets or whatever. So I'm not really sure what the language would have been. I'm interested to find out.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott. Tell us your story about the 2 languages.
So, and again, I'll follow up with a secondary fact, but in this case, it was a combination of Tibetan and Nepalese. So, if anything, the Ewoks climbed Mount Everest and knew a few tribes up there that taught them the way. A lot of the foreign languages that we heard in Star Wars were not, in fact, something that was made up or like you said, played backwards or something like that. They were actually real languages that, in a sense, we kind of got subtitles at times. But for the Ewoks, we just had to rely on C-3PO to basically say what they were saying. The interesting thing about that was years after Star Wars, and Rob knows of this from me personally. At one point, until recently, when I cleaned my garage out, I finally decided to let go of all my original Star Wars laser discs. I had all the original movies, all the original everything. The one that stood out for this particular subject is, and you might not think it would, but the one that stood out in particular was The Phantom Menace. The Phantom Menace was never released on Laserdisc in the US. Somewhere probably around 2000, 2001, I found a company that was willing to import it from Japan, which is the only country it was released in. So I got it. I was thrilled that I had it at the time. And, like any new anything at the time, which again, we're going back 20 years. I was like, cool, now I have the laser disc of this and I'm going to play this. So as we all know, at the beginning of The Phantom Menace, there's a trade thing happening and such, and a bunch of people, or a bunch of characters on a ship talking a language which at the time we got subtitles for. Now, if you played The Phantom Menace on your Laserdisc player, the entire movie, all of it, has Japanese language subtitles everywhere. Unless you're on the Trade Federation ship at the time. Anything that they're speaking on there in a foreign language, there's no subtitles whatsoever.
Right.
There has to be some interesting translation issues with that.
For sure.
Oh my
Because
God.
some of George
Imagine.
Lucas's language and words that he uses, especially in like A New Hope, probably doesn't translate well to Japanese.
One more
Very
thing
cool.
about the Ewoks, as I was looking up the answer to Scott's question, because I wanted to be the guy that knew the answer. Lucas reversed the syllables to designate a new species. The new species rhymes with Miwok, which was a Native American tribe indigenous to the Redwood Forest, in which the Endor scenes were filmed in Return of the Jedi. So he kind of paid tribute to the Native Americans that lived in the Redwood Forest. They were the
neat.
Miwok tribe, and they reverse that or mix it around, and you get Ewok out of that. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Neat. Yeah, I didn't know that. That's pretty neat. At least he put some thought into it.
So he did put a little bit of thought into it. So that's Scott's question. And now last question of the night, we go to Tom with our final question.
So this is more of a debate where I love debating.
Yes.
Which is the better trilogy? Obviously, I'm throwing out the middle trilogy. The original trilogy, it's far and above any trilogy that can be made.
Right.
So which trilogy, the prequel trilogy or the sequel trilogy? So 1, 2, 3 versus 7, 8, 9.
Oh.
And it's the trilogy as a whole. So I'm going to throw it over to my co-host Rob to begin.
I'm going to answer this more from an emotional level, I think, than from maybe a cinematography level, because we had episodes 4, 5, and 6, 77, 8, 78, 86, whatever, 82, 86, and then there was nothing for 20 years. And then finally in 2000, 2001, whatever it was, whatever year the original trilogies came out, then we had the original trilogies. And I remember, Scott, I'm pretty sure you and I went to did we go see the original trilogies together, or did we see the re-releases of the?
We went to the re-releases because we went to I think we went to Woodhaven to see them. I came down to your house and we just went from there. But we went to when they started the re-releases. So
yeah, and that was really exciting for us because you weren't able to see any of the Star Wars movies since '86, and then finally in the '90s you're able to see them again. And I remember going and seeing all the re-releases and being like stoked for that. And then I know, Tom, you and I saw the last 3 together, and also Solo and all those other ones. I don't know. I don't think we saw 1, 2, and 3 together, but I know I saw 1, 2, and 3 with somebody, and I definitely know it wasn't Johnny because we were not friends yet, Johnny. But I'm going, not yet. I'm going on an emotional level here and being like, I just remember how emotionally excited we were to be able to see a new Star Wars movie in the movie theater. Now, did either of them hold up compared to 4, 5, and 6 over time? No. But when they first came out, I remember how excited we were. And I just remember the anticipation, knowing that this is going to be how we see Anakin Skywalker turn into Darth Vader. I just remember before the first one came out, how emotionally excited we were. We're like, oh, it's going to be so great. It's going to be so dark. We're going to see the awesome turn into Darth Vader and blah, blah. And unfortunately, it wasn't as good as that, but the hype for it was very good. So for me, I'm going with the original trilogies. 1, 2, and 3 are better than 7, 8, and 9. So that's my answer. Johnny, what do you think?
Well, I'm gonna of my favorites, of course, I'm with you there, Tom. Definitely the originals. The original 3 can't be beat. Story wise, I don't care that we didn't have as much technology as we have now. The storytelling and just how new it was and different it was compared to anything else being made. I was just as excited in the time frame when we didn't have Star Wars, that the Star Wars movie coming out. I'm on the other side of it, which is I was disappointed. I was like, come on, the more adult, I was how probably almost a teenager when I saw it, because I'm a couple of years older than you guys. So you guys were like 8 or 9, you said? So 10 or 11, so getting close to teens. I was excited because it was still kind of an adult thing, even though it was fantasy and science fiction in the originals. And when we went to the young Anakin Skywalker, and it was all this little kid stuff, and it just felt very like there was this Disney influences, even though I think was that the first transition maybe where they were kind of mixing in with each other? I don't recall.
They weren't
like episode 1.
Yeah.
No, that's all George. That's George.
Okay, so I still was
younger kids.
I just was bummed, and then as you get into the whole Jar Jar things,
exactly,
and then just so there's that part. The way it was filmed and everything was so cool to see the advancements that were made. And then as we got into the later ones, I liked the way the movies looked. I liked a lot of the promise of the themes of these movies. 7, 8, 9, I guess is what it is. 7, 8, 9.
Yeah.
7, 8. What we were going to learn, how much darker it was, how much more, I guess, adult fiendish it was. But then just the stories themselves, in some ways, would be good for a little while. Then they would go flat, and it'd be good and flat. It never carried me. I'd watch them and I go, this is still just not. It's not this. Like, did they read the books differently or something, or did they read? Like where the scripts obviously is a whole new bunch of people. So for me, I don't like either one of them. I'll take the original.
All right, Scott, over to you.
You, Scott.
So I'm obviously gonna side with the originals, but my reasoning, and I'm gonna use the word against the other ones. My reasoning for that isn't because of what you may think, or because you thought maybe a certain actor was cheesy or a certain character or whatever it may be. The original 3 came out in 77, 80, and 83. It was all new to us in every way you can think of. It was a new adventure. It was a new thing. I know Lucas started writing this stuff back in the 60s, but when we finally saw something like that on the screen, I mean, other than seeing like Star Trek at the time, like it was all new for us. These characters, these civilizations, planets, whatever it may be. And even when episodes 1, 2, and 3 came out, and then eventually the later, 7, 8, and 9, as excited as we were for them, the problem that I have with 7, 8, and 9 is I felt they kind of rehashed or regurgitated what 4, 5, and 6 were, from the aspect of 4, there's a young boy on a desert planet. Oh no, what's going on? There's a young boy or a young character or a young woman in this case on a desert planet. The second one, we have certain characters being chased, the whole thing. Episode 8, we have characters just simply being chased, the whole thing. And then, you get to Jedi, and, you have your stuff there, but ultimately at the end, you got to see the Emperor, and you got to see the Emperor again. So from that aspect, as excited as I was to see all of them in general, 7, 8, and 9 for me were just kind of filler, if you want to say. There were even aspects of it, like when Luke was on the island and trying to train her, there was even some of his mannerisms where I was, no, this character shouldn't come off like this,
Oh, and Mark Hamill felt the same way that you do.
Yeah, as cheesy in a sense as episodes 1, 2, and 3 were. And don't get me wrong, I couldn't stand Jar Jar Binks. And Hayden Christensen's acting at times was whinier than a 6-year-old girl. But it told something we didn't see or we'd only heard of. You saw something different. Like in general, like even the other movies like Solo and Rogue One. Solo, okay, it was watchable, but to me, like Rogue One by itself stands alone and is a better movie than 7, 8, and 9 put together, at least as far as I'm concerned. Like I could put Rogue One on now and even just have it in the background and going. Yeah. But at least it told something original, something we'd only heard of.
Even Scott, the funny part about that is you knew exactly how that movie was going to end.
You did, but you wanted to see how it got there.
Exactly.
Yeah, because
You
you
know-
were really stoked to see, okay, how were they going to tell this story?
Even
And what
Yeah.
were they going to use? Yeah.
even a friend of mine the other day tagged me on Facebook, and Rob knows this, and even with our age, but like I grew up watching, like, every Christmas Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas on HBO. I couldn't wait to watch it. Back then, it felt like I was watching a 3-hour show. Who knew years later? I was like, it's only 45 minutes. Anyway, a friend of mine sent me a thing saying, hey, dude, they're developing an Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas Broadway show. Are you interested in going? And I said, well, yeah, just let me know when that's available. But the thing is, I just don't want to see a rehash of Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas. You know, I want to see why Chuck is so mad and why he's so hungry.
Right.
You know.
You definitely want to see something new there. I saw the
Exactly.
Tom, you asked the question. What is your thoughts? What do you think?
So you guys brought up some really great points. To go back into the duplication of 7, 8, 9 to mirror that, it mirrored 4, 5, 6. If they would have just went with the George Lucas's original idea that each sequel, each 3 movies would have a point. The first 3 were about Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader. The middle 3 were about Anakin Skywalker's son, Luke Skywalker. And then the 7, 8, 9 were supposed to be about Luke's grandchildren originally. So to me, that would have made a nice progression. That's why they call this a Skywalker saga. It's not really a Skywalker saga. The Skywalker saga is really just now 1 through 6, because Luke really didn't play a big part into these movies. And I think us, as the guys in their 40s and 50s, really were disappointed that we didn't get the Luke Skywalker saga 7, 8, 9. We got the rehash of 4, 5, and 6 with new characters. So, in my opinion, the best movie from this trilogy, from all 6 of those movies, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, was Force Awakens. I know it rehashed, but I felt like the cinematography was good, the story was good, the characters were good. I really did like the 3 new characters, and I thought they dropped the ball on having this as your new trio, like the Han, Luke, and Leia.
Yeah,
I think Finn, Rey, and Poe could have been your new 3 in that trio. And I wanted to see where their adventures took them in 8 and 9. And that never happened. They did the characters didn't even really see each other. They were all spread out in the galaxy. So I was really disappointed that way. But I did think Force Awakens was the best. I thought 8 and 9 were god awful. They were really hard to watch. 8 was a mess. It was all over the place. It has some really cool moments. Like, I really like the throne room scene with Snoke and Rey and Kylo Ren. That was a really cool scene. Episode 9 was a total wasted opportunity. Star Wars could have had their Infinity War moment, like Marvel did, where you could have had the Sith versus the Jedi in that ending, and it just never materialized. So that was a letdown. I feel like they had no direction, those last 3 movies. Now, episodes 1, 2, and 3, as Johnny pointed out, episode 1 was kind of disappointing. You had all this expectation, and you got Jar Jar, and the pod race was cool, but you basically a heavy helping of Jar Jar. And, you know, as teenagers, even, you're not really that interested in political intrigue. So to me, episode 1 was a letdown. It was a little disappointing, but I think overall, as a trilogy, 1, 2, and 3 was superior over 7, 8, and 9. And I would have made, I think the original trilogy would have been, or not the original trilogy, but 1, 2, 3 would have been better had they just started with the Clone Wars in the first movie. You could build up a little bit of political intrigue, that's fine. Then have the Clone Wars start in episode 1. Episode 2, the whole thing is the Clone Wars, not the very last 20 minutes. And then episode 3, episode 2 would end with Anakin turning over. And then episode 3 would be all about the aftermath of Anakin turning over, the aftermath of the Clone Wars, and the formation of the Empire. And then, bam, you have that 20-year span that you have to only imagine what happened in between there, and then you get A New Hope. That's how I would have imagined the 9 movies laid out.
I'm gonna make a point on episode 1, 2, and 3 for a second, because I think they could have done so much more with the character, but I was mad when it happened. And I'm going to raise my hand to say I was mad, but who else was mad Darth Maul got killed?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It was so good.
I mean,
and
it was so far.
It was all. Mm-hmm. It was also funny to me that my son doesn't care about episodes 4, 5, and 6 as much as he likes episodes 1, 2, and 3, because he's looking at the technology as a kid, trying to watch 4, 5, and 6 in the early 2000s. The lightsaber battles are lame, let's be honest. They weren't nearly as exciting as Darth Maul's lightsaber battle was unbelievable.
Yeah, for sure.
So you go from Darth Vader, who's practically at one point just holding the lightsaber with one hand and just doing a couple of these little things. Then as a kid, you watch Darth Maul lightsaber fight, and they're jumping all over. Even in episode 2, when Yoda goes crazy, CGI Yoda is crazy, Jedi, lightsaber battle, jumping all over the place, doing backflips and everything. He was like, yo, these movies are so much better. And I'm like, yeah, but what you don't get is that the story, the heartfelt part of 4, 5, and 6 are so much better than the storytelling in 1, 2, 3. But it is interesting. If you ask kids of different generations which Star Wars movies they like the best, the youngest kids now, they like 7, 8, and 9 because that's the ones they remember seeing in the movie theaters. My son, in his 19, he likes 1, 2, and 3 better. And the old people, we know which one is really the best one, which is 4, 5, and 6.
Well, not to mention, you ask probably most kids that are folks that are watching, younger folks, that were kind of our age or a little bit older, now would say, I don't care about any of them. I'm more interested in all this, the streamings, like the Mandalorian and all that kind of stuff. That it's just So I guess it's the era in which you grow up in and stuff. Yeah, it was definitely rough to watch those first 3.
I remember taking my nephew at the time when episode 1 came out, and I gotta think back. He was probably maybe 14, maybe just going on 15 at the time. But literally, it was one of those things. Like 5 minutes into the movie, he was kind of like, why does everything look cooler than the movies you watched?
Right.
And I was like, they had different budgets.
Not to make it go further, but at the same time, though, it's like when they redid Willy Wonka. You listen, the original holds up. It's great. I'm glad, like for instance, they're doing a new thing where they're telling a new story. I'm good with that. Don't try to redo what's already been done. That stuff just irritates the hell out of me. Come on.
I never watched. I never actually watched the Johnny. Even my wife and kids were like, "Oh, that one's cool." Well, that's the one The one I know came out in the 70s.
Dude, I got about 15 minutes in, and I walked out of the theater. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
So much
Here's
different.
An interesting thing to think about when we're talking about Darth Maul. Obviously, he's one of the most badass villains of the entire Star Wars saga. But what would they have done with him had he stayed alive? Would Lucas have made him as cool as he is known as now? Or was that really credit to Dave Filoni, who made him really cool in the Clone Wars and after the Clone Wars? Because that's really where he got his reputation for being one of the coolest characters, was the Clone Wars cartoons and even Rebels.
Yeah, because in the movie, he only had like 3 lines in the whole movie. And he was just like a menacing force there in the show. But also with, there being 2, with the Sith, there's always 2. Now, if they would have kept him, there would have been 3. And it's like, wait, how can there only be 2 if there's a third one? Because, as we find out, Palpatine is 1 and then Darth Vader was 2. So it's like, how could he be there as well if Palpatine's actually the one pulling all the strings? So,
but like
my thought process is that they simply could have extended his stay. Like, maybe he died somewhere in the middle of episode 3. Got into some kind of traffic accident with a Falcon. Maybe that was delivering something then.
Right. Like, did you really need Dooku? Why couldn't Maul have been the Count Dooku in episodes 2 and 3? And how cool would it have been to see Anakin fight Maul in episode 3?
Oh yeah,
in the beginning?
Maybe he runs into Grievous somewhere, and things just take care of themselves.
All right. Well, that's how we do it, folks. This is our first episode of Bantha Milk Presents Around the Dejarik Table. I want to thank our two guests. First, Johnny, tell us about yourself. This is your opportunity to plug away. Tell us about your show. Tell us about your art and everything. Go for it.
Sure, yeah. You can catch me on YouTube as well, johnjalopy.com, or you can go to my webpage, johnjalopy.com. You can get links to my YouTube channel. Every Monday night, we do a live sketching show, sometimes a podcast. We talk about movies. We do cool hot rod art. It's a group event. We've got a lot of people that come on, and we let them chime in. They got questions. We talk about different things, kind of like what we're doing here, is where we'll talk about, say, like we watch Smokey and the Bandit, and I'll do a drawing of the bandit in a cartoon way, and we'll talk about the movie and all the silly things that happens. And of course, I'm co-hosted with my wife, Hitty B. It's a fun time. So if you have an opportunity, every Monday night, 9:30 Eastern time, right here on YouTube and also Facebook.
Yeah, I check it out a lot. I'm always in there, and I love their whole format is awesome. They're very chat friendly. People are constantly writing comments back and forth. Everybody introducing themselves from all over the planet, which is really cool. Johnny has people watching live from anywhere from Japan. On Monday, there was somebody from Japan that was there. Almost every state is represented at least once throughout a year. I think even one time I remember somebody from Alaska even was like chiming in.
Yes, we finally had some Alaskan people.
Do they have hot rods in Alaska?
Which was
absolutely
awesome. Where do you race them?
In the snow, man. You throw a big giant 427 with a blower. You can go all kinds of places in the snow.
You can go anywhere in the snow. Yeah. So yes. That's Johnny. Scott, you have a pretty cool thing that you have going on as well. So Scott, tell us. You wanted to make sure that you told us a story about Killington as well. So tell us everything. Tell us about your Instagram page and everything else that you want to tell us. Scott, go ahead.
All right. So I'll keep it Star Wars first with my Killington story. So for you guys that don't know Rob and my past, we used to follow a local cover band in the Philadelphia area, made real good friends with them. I still talk and hang out with them personally to this day. It was probably around 2001, 2002, they had a gig up in Killington, Vermont. So at this point, it's probably about 3:30 in the morning. I'm sitting there in the living room with the drummer, George. You got Star Wars Trivial Pursuit there? And he's like, yeah. And all of a sudden he goes, wait a minute. You're a Star Wars guy, right? And I was like, well, yeah. And he goes, all right, let's go. We set up the board and the table and everything. So at this point, it's like 6 o'clock in the morning. Everybody's at basically the final piece to basically win the game. I'd get a question like, who's Darth Vader's son? Luke Skywalker. What spaceship did, the next person would get, what spaceship did, Han Solo fly? Oh, the Millennium Falcon. George would get a question. And it happened like every time. So we're getting all these easy questions. And George would get there was a symbol on the third deck of the Millennium Falcon. What was that symbol? Or who was the gaffer that assisted George Lucas on episode 4 of he was getting all these
that was Willie Johnson,
like off the wall questions compared to what we were getting. And the thing was, he was getting them all right. It's like 7 in the morning, and we all just looked at George and we were like, dude, you win. Screw it. You win. The gaffer, you win.
Do you want to plug old school BMX while you're at it there, Scott?
Yeah, so what I kind of did on the side, and it's almost become like a second job. So in the '80s, I rode BMX freestyle, basically X Games before it was X Games. Um, I was, friends, or I knew Matt Hoffman before Matt Hoffman was a name. A lot of what I did was I kept all the BMX publications from back then. I worked at the bike shop, so I always had first access to them and things of that nature. It probably took me a couple of years total, but I scanned more than 250 publications, and I made them that you can flip through them online like you were flipping through a book. Now, if you go onto my site, you'll see a section that's like videos and magazines, and you can genuinely browse through freestyling, BMX Plus, BMX Action, you name it. So I made a YouTube channel, which I just called Old School BMX TV, not even thinking it would grow into something. All of a sudden, one day, I posted this picture of a rider that rode for Haro Bikes at the time, Brian Blythler. When I posted that, I didn't even tag Haro or anything on it, but Haro got wind of it, I guess. Haro had and reshared it and more or less said, go check out this Instagram. And it was like, since that day, it's almost been like nonstop. I can still take my 1988 Haro Master out and ride it around, and there's always somebody looking at me like, why is this 50-some-year-old dude riding a bike? I made the Instagram and the YouTube just got it, but it took off. Like the fact now that when I go to a show or something like that, that the riders I look to come and sit next to me like, hey, dude, what are you working on this week? So
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Fun. All right. Well, on that note, that's going to end our show tonight. I want to thank both Johnny and Scott for being here and hopping on, and especially Scott last minute. We had somebody else who canceled, and I said, Scott, what about you? And he said, yeah, I'm in. Let's go. And to my new co-host for this version of Bantha Milk Podcast, Tom, I think it was a very successful first night. So until next month, when we have two other guests down here replacing Johnny and Scott, I want to thank everybody for being here, and I will see you all again on the flip side. And, why not? Let's go with the old school. May the force be with you.
Oh.